hopefully you've already used hints 1, 2, or 3, and I'm going to get started with hint 4 and build up our Blackjack project step by step. Now, the idea of the hint 1, 2, and 3 is to get you to create these small to-dos of your own so that you can have practice breaking down the problem into a list and then breaking it down into a flowchart and then breaking it down into smaller bite-sized to-dos. So let's start out with the first one. We have to create a deal card function that uses the list below to return a random card. And 11 is going to be the ace in this deck. So let's get started, and we're going to go and create our deal card function. Now this function is going to contain these cards, so I'm going to go ahead and paste it in, make sure it's indented so it's inside the function. And now I'm going to use these cards to randomly pick one out of this list. So to do that, we can of course import our random module, and then I'm going to use random.choice to pick a random card from my list of cards. And then this of course has an output, this random.choice, so I'm going to save that output, namely the random card, inside another variable called card. And then finally we're going to return this chosen card as the output. So that's step 4 done. Now let's move on to step 5. So we're going to deal the user and computer 2 cards each using the deal card function. And very helpfully, the hint tells us that we can start out with a blank user card and a blank computer card list. So we basically just have to add 2 cards to each of these lists. To do this, I'm going to use a for loop, and I'm going to use the range operator to run this for loop twice. So you've seen this syntax before when we talked about for loops, and I've got an underscore here because we don't actually need this particular variable. All we need is for this loop to run twice, and this code is going to achieve that. Every single time this loop runs, we're going to get a new card by calling deal card. Now remember that deal card has an output. It outputs a random card. So if you want, it's actually quite helpful to add some documentation to this. So we could say returns a random card from the deck. And now when I write deal card, you can see that the doc tells me that this function is going to return a random card from the deck. So that random card is going to replace this function call, so we can capture that data by storing it inside a variable. So we'll call that new card and set it equal to the output from the function deal card. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add this new card to the user's cards. So at the moment it's an empty list, and all we have to do is say user cards dot append, and then the object that we want to add to that list is going to be the new card. Now some of you might be tempted to instead use the plus equals. You might want to write something like this: user cards plus equal new card. And I want to show you what actually happens when you run this, because this is a really common error. We get a traceback and we get a type error. It tells us that the int object is not iterable, and it highlights this line 49 as the reason for the error.